Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Hey, you guys. Welcome. So today I want to talk about the village again. I've done a podcast on this. I think it bears repeating for the new year. And some things came up over the holidays in our Oh Crap Cafe, which is my online parenting community. And I wanted to go over some things. So we all bitch and moan about the village, right? We don't have the village. Where's the village? I was told it takes a village. It does take a village to raise a child. It does. And more, I'm just seeing people routinely reject the village. And so, number one, I heard from a lot of people the loneliness of holidays because they have cut off some toxic relatives, which I approve of. I want to once again caution you about cutting people off. And this is a tricky topic because, yes, some people are very, very toxic. And I understand that they may be doing harm to your children. They may be actively going against your wishes. But there's a spectrum of toxicity, and I'm finding that more and more parents are very quick to cut people off when it's their view of toxicity, but the children are safe. The children are loving their time with their grandparents. A relationship with grandparents is very, very special. And there's like lots of studies on this. And so the thing about cutting people off is that sometimes we cut off our nose to spite our face. And I want to reiterate that when we talk about the village, and the village, like we always had a village, right? Like back in the day, we generally didn't move too far from our parents. We were having kids younger, so that grandparents tended to be more alive and healthier, right? Because everybody was a little bit younger. We had cousins. People had kids around the same age. I find like that's one of the things in this day and age that like some people are having kids when they're 23 and some people are having kids when they're 50. And so finding you're not always having cousins be the same age. I know Pascal was kind of stuck in the middle. He is closest in age to my sister's children, but they live in Oregon, and my niece and nephew are now like 27. And so and then I have another round of grandnieces and nephews who are like 3, right? So he was kind of stuck at holidays. He didn't have the experience I had, which was like, 18 billion kids running around getting sweaty on the holidays. So I think that contributes, right? So all these things. But I want to remind you that when we talk about the village is clumsy. The village is awkward. The village is messy. So back in those days, the village was usually family and some friends, yes, but it was an overbearing aunt. There was a lot of unsolicited advice. There were people who thought they knew better than you, people who would snap at your kids in a way that you might not talk to them. That existed, yeah, and that was part of it. Families are messy and human, and there's usually a creepy uncle thrown in there somewhere, right? But when we cut people off with no contact, that gets lonely, right? And so you kind of have to weigh things out. And again, I know this is a touchy subject because you may have cut off a parent, and I'm not saying you're wrong, but I do want you to think. And if you've decided that this parent is truly toxic, which I know there's a new level, the boomers, and my mother was an amazing fucking grandparent, and my stepdad, and to some degree my dad, but I do know I hear awful reports. I see awful comments on Instagram, like just not parents that just don't want to be grandparents, that don't take part at all. And I totally get that. And I get that there's grandparents who are just snide. I get that there's in-laws who are just tearing you down. So I'm not saying to not cut people off, right? I'm not saying that because some people need to be cut off, but maybe there can always be a door open if their behavior changes, which it probably won't, but maybe. And, when my sister and I have had difficulties in the past, the door has been open, right? Like we didn't speak for a long time, but then I had always said, okay, the door's open. Like, I'm not opposed to this. I just can't be mistreated in this way all the time. But if you have decided that you've moved far away from family, or you've decided that you really need to cut people off, then you have to make your village with your friends. And recently I was on some Instagram post and they were talking about your house should never be ready. Your house should always be ready if somebody were 5 minutes away, like guests being 5 minutes away. And like, it was a stitch. And this guy came in and he was like, what the fuck? Do you have kids? Like, my house is always going to be a mess. And I had commented the story that I've told on this podcast before, that one day a really good friend was like, oh, you guys can't come over. She had a trampoline. She had 4 kids. She was like, awesome. And she was like, oh, I just can't do it. I'm so behind in laundry and like 6 people with laundry. And I was like, well, I'll just come over and have coffee and help you. And she was like, what? And I was like, dude, I do my own laundry. It's not like I haven't seen underpants or whatever, So she was like, are you sure? And it was astounding to me because I was like, why? We're just going to sit and have coffee and watch the kids. Why wouldn't we do that while we're folding laundry? So she was like, okay. And she was behind. She had a whole spare room full of laundry. We just sat and shot the shit and drank our coffee, but folded laundry. Like all moms have to do all the time, right? Or even dads. But, and I commented on this post about that, and I think it's up to like 15,000 people have liked it. And there's like 78 comments of, oh, I wish I had a friend like this. Oh, I wish you were my friend. Oh, can you start a traveling van company and come do this? And I was like, what the hell is happening that we're not supporting each other, right? And I don't understand, like, we've come to a place of this extreme individualism with our parenting. We don't want people in our home just stopping by. We only want people over when the house is clean and we're ready. And we only want, dinner parties when the food is like elegant. Like, we're fucking ourselves, you guys. Like, we're fucking ourselves hard. We have to start helping each other. And sometimes that means you have to be the initiator, or sometimes you have to ask for help and be like, hey, I would love to see you today. I can't go to the playground. Can you bring the kids over and can you help me? Because I'm a little behind. And instead of just sitting with coffee, can we do this? And then next week I'll come to your house and do the same. We have to start trading services. And what we have to get out of is we have gotten into silos that nobody else can parent our kids. Nobody else can reprimand our kids. Have you ever seen those pictures of, what do they call it? The Nona alert system or something, like the grandmothers hanging out the balconies in Italy, like ready to report on all the kids. I remember when I was coming up, neighborhood play, but any parent could reprimand any kid. Like if one kid was acting like a jerk, hey, you cut it out. What are you doing? You're being a jerk. Like every parent could call the kids out. Every parent, and your parents were like, if you came home and told and said, oh, Mrs. Johnson yelled at me, your parent would be like, well, what'd you do? Right? And so if we could get back to a little bit of that, because if you think you're the only person who can parent your child, nobody else can say anything to your child, nobody else can feed your child. And of course, I understand there's allergies and things like that, but again, you're just fucking yourself, because then there's no way you're letting the village in. And I literally have said this to a couple of private clients. The village doesn't show up on a white horse and save you. The village doesn't come in and do everything to your specifications. The village lives their life in community with you. And that means different opinions, different parenting approaches, different ways to reprimand a child or to get better behavior. And sometimes this is awesome because kids listen to other parents before they'll listen to you. So that's the help. But if we start shutting people out because it's not exactly the way we want it, then you're just fucked in a silo by yourself. You're going to be lonely and you're going to be overwhelmed because you're going to do it all. And so part of this, like, overwhelm that I'm seeing in so many moms and so many people complaining about the village. But we won't let people see our dirty houses, even though we all have dirty houses and we're moms. Our house dirt probably looks the same. It's probably spilled food. Our kids' underwear probably have what do they call those? Tread marks, right? Skid marks, because our kids are potty training. Like, we've all cleaned up poop. We've had poop on our hands. We've had puke in our hands. Like, we've all done this. And so, like, the idea that we're embarrassed when somebody sees this in our home is like craziness. And I was talking to one mama friend, and, she had decided to cut off her family. And she was like, I feel so bad for my son. And I was like, well, you cut your parents off because they were truly toxic. So you can't feel bad for your son now because you did the right thing, right? Like, you have to know that you've created a different circumstance. And so, like, I want you guys to take ownership. If you are cutting off people, I'm not saying not to have your feelings. You can have your feelings, but don't get mired in, my son's so lonely. No, you created this for a greater good. And so there's magic in that. And so don't get stuck in that, like, we have nobody. You have nobody because you made a choice, and that choice was to benefit your family. And so live in the benefit, right? How lucky are you to not have toxic people in your life? So you want to turn that one on its head. But again, so I said to this mom, well, don't you have any like school friends, or mom friends? And she was like, well, I do have a friend who, has offered to take him before, and we'll probably do some holiday stuff with them. And she's like, but, I just feel guilty. Like, I should be doing it. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? I feel guilty because I should be in charge of my child, nobody else. The nuclear family, this is bullshit. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to go on such a rant, but this is such bullshit. We were never meant to do this as a nuclear family with nobody else and shutting out the outside world, because parents have to work. And guess what? Even if you have a setup where one parent works and one parent stays home, it's going to be overwhelming. And so again, if you've cut off family members, or you don't have that extended family, you don't have the cousins or that kind of thing, that's okay. But then you have to accept help from friends. One of my favorite stories, it's from Amanda Palmer in The Art of Asking, which is one of my favorite, most gifted books. And she tells the story of who was it? Thoreau at Walden Pond. So Thoreau, went out to Walden Pond. It lived in a log cabin, a little cabin out there. And he was like getting back to nature so he could think all these like philosophical thoughts. And he just wanted to be disconnected from everybody. And that's where all his Walden Pond writings came out of. And then it came to light more recently that, Thoreau's mom and sister brought him hot, fresh made donuts every morning. And like the literary world exploded, right? Because Thoreau didn't disconnect. They brought him freaking donuts. Like, what a cheat. Like, he didn't have these great thoughts. He had great thoughts because he had fresh donuts brought to him by the women in his family, and everybody was up in arms. And Amanda Palmer's like, take the fucking donut. If somebody offers you a hot, fresh baked donut, fried donut, you take the donut, meaning you take the help. If somebody offers to take your kid and you say no and then bitch about not having a village, dude, take the fucking donut, please. And some of these stories I know are repetitive, guys, but I have new listeners, but this is so fucking important that we get this lesson here. I was working with a client, two moms, and their son, had some behavioral issues, and he was extra, loved him, extra, had some sensory needs, and they were on vacation with another family, and the two mom's son started to hit one of the other kids. So another parent went over and just very like, not, no big deal, not angry, not mean. No. You don't get to hit my kid. We don't hit. Nobody's hitting. So you don't get to hit my kid. And so my client comes to me and she's like, can you believe it? The audacity. Like, she's trying to parent my kid. I was right there. She should have said something to me. And I was like, she's the village. That's what the village does. The village helps you out in all ways. So I want you to rethink. I've dropped a lot of F-bombs in this podcast, haven't I? I want you to think, about when we complain about the overwhelm, about doing it all ourselves, about not having that village. The village is messy, but that's what your child needs. Your child needs community in all different flavors and shades and different philosophies. That's what they need. Different ways of teaching, different ways of disciplining, which means to teach, right? Different ways of reprimanding, different praise, different experiences of different humans. And don't get yourself stuck in a silo of this is me. I do it this way with my kid. Nobody else can come in this bubble. Nobody else can do it the way I do it. Or definitely don't get yourself in the cycle of feeling guilt because you think you're supposed to do it all, then crying yourself to sleep at night because you're overwhelmed from doing it all. Like, we got to wake up, you guys. Like, even as I'm talking, like, doesn't that sound ridiculous? Like refusing help or not initiating help. Get something going together with your mom girlfriends. I remember when Pascal was born, I was part of, like, your birth group. You take your birth class, and this was a homeschool birth class. And so all our kids were born right around, the same time, within like 3 weeks of each other. And twice a week we met, and we would let two moms nap. And we all ate very similarly. And I know this would be controversial, but we would breastfeed each other's kids. Part of what's happening with breastfeeding, when we talk about a mom not being able to breastfeed, back in the village days, another mom would breastfeed that kid. That's how it worked. But now we can't even fathom that. Oh my God, exchanging bodily fluids. And we thought nothing of it. And these moms were so grateful to sleep. And we just traded off who took a nap. And so, but we created that. We said, hey, you want to do this? Hey, we're going to do this. Then we discussed our diets, knowing that we were going to be breastfeeding each other's kids. And so that's how it works, right? It doesn't, no one's showing up to help you unless you start to help yourself. And definitely no one is showing up to do it to your specifications. So allow people in, think about when you're cutting people off. And again, I just can't reiterate this. I understand that there are circumstances in which you would want to cut somebody off. And then there are other circumstances where I think we have to, we need to evaluate. We need to evaluate, is my child actually in danger, or am I only seeing my parents through the lens of my parenting? Yeah. How I was parented. And I think this is really important because I've thought a lot about this as Pascal's growing up. And, I tease him. I'm like, I'm ready for I want grandbabies, just to let you know. Not ready. Not right now. But I'm like, I want grandbabies. I would like 7, please, because I only have 1 kid. But what grandparenting is a second chance, right? Like the things I wish I'd done differently, I can do with my grandkids, right? And I also have time and I have more income. And so grandparenting really is a second chance for a lot of grandparents. A lot of times though, I think if we haven't done our work, we can only see them through the lens of how we were parented. And so we tend to think they're more toxic than they're actually being with our kids. Again, this may not be the case for you, but if it is, well, I'm asking you to evaluate it. Okay. I had to evaluate my father, who was a shitty ass dad, horrible. I had to evaluate how I felt about him compared to how Pascal feels about him. And Pascal has literally said, I hear all your stories about him. I've heard you guys talk about it. He is not that to me. He's a really good grandfather to me. And I thought that was like really powerful. He doesn't have that feeling. So I can't help but see my father through that lens, even though I've healed a lot to do with him and our relationship. But it would be wrong of me to say, oh, he hasn't changed, because he kind of hasn't. He opens his mouth and stupid comes out. That's all. But he hasn't changed that much, but he's good to my son. And that relationship is really solid. And so sometimes we have to step back and say, are my parents pissing me off, or are they pissing everybody off? Are they really damaging my kid? Because sometimes we have to sit with our uncomfortable feelings so they can have that relationship. And that is a very special relationship if it's happening. But also if you have to cut off extended family members, or maybe you decided to move very far away from all the people. And so I think there's power in owning our circumstances. So like with that mama friend who cut off her parents and think, just kind of mired in the sadness that her son would be lonely. No, own your decision. Own your decision. And if you decided to move far away, you have to own that decision, and you can't get stuck in that. Feelings are valid, right? Have your feelings, but don't get stuck in it, right? Because it's really easy to blame and be like, oh, well, nobody comes to visit me. And well, you're the one who moved, you know what I mean? And so I think there's a lot of empowerment in just owning the decision. Like, hey, I really wanted to live here. It's a better cost of living. The school system's better. And yes, I'm sad that on the holidays we're kind of alone, but I'm happy with the choice that we made to live here. And so I think that's really an empowering thing. So yeah. And remember, I think it's just so important to remember that the village isn't what you think it is, that it's just varied people with varied opinions. And I think that's what makes the fabric, the tapestry of life so interesting. Like if we're all the same, I don't want somebody all the same. I loved watching my mother reprimand Pascal. He listened to her all the time. I was like, what the hell is your secret? She was like, hear my voice? I'm using a different voice than you use. You whine. She said, you let him boss you around. I remember that when he was like 2, and I was like, no, I don't. And she said, yeah, you do. You'll pay attention to it now. And sure as shit, the kid was bossing me around. And I was like, oh man, I didn't even notice that because it's just me and him. So yeah. And be willing. I think it's really hard too when we hear differing opinions, we're so sensitive as parents. We really are. We think everybody's judging us, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're just offering unsolicited advice. That one I can't stand. I see that all the time on social media. Like, just don't offer anybody unsolicited advice. And it's like, really? Because sometimes unsolicited advice is helpful, right? Like, especially as a new mom. I mean, I didn't always take it to heart, but I feel like I wouldn't have learned half the shit I learned with Pascal if somebody, largely a relative, hadn't offered me unsolicited advice. So anyway, don't be so protective of your bubble that you don't let the village in, knowing that the village is messy and just varied. So that's all I have for today. So I hope you guys take that to heart. And I hope you start something in your community, whether it's everybody helps and, somebody watches the kids, and a bunch of moms go to other people's houses and help, or maybe just helping a friend fold laundry, or, making it easier to just drop by. Hey, I was in the neighborhood. I just dropped by. Who does that? Jesus, you can't even call somebody now without texting them first, right? Like, we don't do that anymore. But I'd love to bring that back because we're suffering. We're suffering not just with overwhelm, but with loneliness, because we have to do it all ourselves. And we're just, again, siloing ourselves so much. So get out there, people. Get out there. Create the community you want. Create the village. We can do this. All right. As always, I love you guys. Appreciate you listening, and rock up and have an awesome day.
Okay, bye, everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also, I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore, and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.